Joining me tonight is my good friend Willie Jolley, and he needs no introduction, but I will introduce you. He's one of the top speakers in the world, one of the top motivational, and I like to say inspirational speakers in the world. Dr. Willie Jolley is really what he's accomplished by earning his doctorate. And Willie, it's good to have you on, man.
My dear friend, it's a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure, and a joy beyond measure. So thank you for having me on the program.
I love the way you just said that. Go on with your bad self.
Well, it's good to be, and I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad you're staying safe and secure and healthy and whole. So I'm grateful to be here.
And likewise, man, it's good to see you as well. I know that your beautiful bride is likely right there somewhere near to make sure that you're
very close. That's
okay.
Right.
Tell her I said hi.
I so will, and keep me straight. And you know, my wife is a germaphobe, so she has really shut it down, and we have pretty much been in the house since March. And other than going to grocery store and a few things like that. But we're grateful, though, that we're able to do programs like yours. I do my daily radio show right from here, my weekly radio show on XM right from here. So I do everything right from here. So thank you for asking about it. She's doing great.
Excellent. And look, we are living in a new normal that I've characterized as being quite abnormal.
Yes.
And out of that, these unusual circumstances has caused many people to fall into a pattern of fear. Some have fallen into a pattern of being overstressed and over concerned about things. And then we've seen people go to the streets protesting and politicizing the wearing of a mask. What do you say? How do you see the world as it is today?
Well, we're in an unprecedented time, as we all know, and we are in a time where we're seeing not just one crisis, but multiple crisis moments that by themselves would be front page. But we've got so much going on that it is unfathomable that we would think it would all happen at the same time. So we got a pandemic that is global, and then we are following that by economic downturn, followed by job loss, followed by racial strife, followed by social upheaval. And it all is happening at the same time. In fact, Kelly, I recently told somebody I'm waiting for the locusts to show up, okay? So we've got a lot going on, but how do you get through this? And how do people who are struggling, because many people are having to check themselves into mental health facilities. We've seen a rise in suicides. We've seen a lot of people who are depressed. And so what I've been doing is a lot of interviews and programs to try and help people through this. Many people know that I wrote a book called A Setback is a Setup for a Comeback. And that book went on to be a bestseller, a global bestseller. And that led me or gave me the opportunity to work with Ford Motor Company in 2006, 2007, 2008, when they were in a crisis moment. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. And they brought me in because of that book. And I worked with them 3 years. And in 2009, Ford was able to reject a government bailout and go from losing millions to making billions, in a time where the economy went down and where circumstances in America went down. What was the difference? It was thinking. And so what I have been sharing through the books and through the interviews and through the programming that we do on radio is that in crisis moments, you've got to be mindful of a couple of things that will help get you through it. First of all, understand the word crisis by its pure definition. Is one of the best definitions I've ever heard was from John F. Kennedy. In 1959, he gave a speech, and he talked about the Asian definition of crisis was very profound because it said, one, while you're in a crisis, you have great danger, but at the exact same time, you have a time of great opportunity. And that's what I believe this first is a great time of great danger, but opportunity. Second is that there are some principles that I shared not only in the setback book, but also in the follow-up book, Turn Setbacks into Greenbacks, about how you get through these and not just survive them, but thrive in the midst of them. If you do some historical analysis, you'll see that many great companies that we now know as Fortune 100 companies or major leading organizations started in either depressionary or recessionary times and challenging times. Disney, Uber, Facebook, Microsoft, General Electric, they all started in tough times. So there are opportunities for those who have the eye to see them.
That's great, Willie Jolley. The fantastic information. I want to stay with you and keep you for a little bit longer.
Sure.
Do you mind?
Oh, anything right. For you. You my guy. Okay, this is my folks. Y'all got one of the best in the business on with Kelly Wright. He is just incredible, and what a journalist, and what a man of faith and integrity and character. So if y'all don't know him, let me tell you, I know him. He's a great man.
I appreciate you, man. I'm just June's boy.
That's right. There you go.
We'll be back after the break, and we'll talk more to Willie Jolley. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to my good friend, Dr. Willie Jolley. And Willie, in the previous segment, you were talking about a couple of things. You mentioned panic, how it comes from the Greek word choke. And certainly this is an environment that we have like none other. And it's actually choking so many of us. One of the things that has become very disturbing on top of the pandemic has been the racial divide. I saw you post something on social media with regard to the George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd. It hurt all of us in such a visceral way, especially those of us who are Black living in America and know what it's like to come up against it with police. Even though we know there are great police officers out there, you always have in the back of your mind about that one who will not be so wise and so caring about us. And certainly, like I've experienced, you've experienced it. But what do you say? How do you address the nation right now that's going through this racial tension? And you also talked about leadership in the previous segment. And we find that leadership from the top is lacking.
Yes.
In terms of healing the racial divide.
Well, a couple things. You're right. I've done a couple posts that have really gone viral, have started to trend. The first one I did was during the time when they were still rioting. And I felt I had to address that, particularly for many of the young people who were angry and didn't know how to focus that anger. Right. And I talked about my father taking me and my brother, 1968. He was a journalist, and he took us down to 14th Street right after Martin Luther King got killed, the day after, and there were fires, there was looting. We went to a giant food store near our home, about a mile away from our home, and people were looting, and the police had thrown up their hands and said, just take what you want. I said, Dad, can we go in and get some desserts? He said, no. He said, if you didn't buy it, it's not yours. I said, but they're giving it. He said, no. He said, your character and your integrity are not for sale and never to be compromised. Never forget that. And that was a profound impact on so many people. Since then, I've done another one where I talk about the whole concept of Black Lives Matter. We've heard lots of discourse. Some people are not feeling it, and some people are feeling it. And one of the reasons people are not feeling it, a lot of my evangelical friends, a lot of my white friends have said, I'm concerned because it says Black Lives Matter. That means that only Black Lives Matter, or that no one else, don't all lives matter? And I said, you know what? I taught a class at our church, First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, where you've been to visit.
Great church.
And so I taught a class on communication. And in that communication class, I say the impact of emphasis can have an impact on your full and complete discourse of a statement. I didn't say you stole that car. I didn't say you stole that car. I didn't say, hey, you stole that car. They say you stole that car. They say you stole that car. Every time I change the emphasis, the meaning change. So when you say Black Lives Matter, then many people will get thrown off because they think only Black Lives Matter. But as one of my friends had put a post, he said, Black lives aren't the only ones that matter. I shared with him that the emphasis was at the wrong place. It's Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
They matter. They matter. My kids matter. Your kids matter. Many of my friends who were white said they'd never had to give their children the talk. I know you know what the talk is. I know what the talk is. Every Black person I know knows what the talk is. When they get their driver's license, you have to have a talk with them. What to do when they get pulled over. Not if they get pulled over, when they get pulled over. Keep both hands on the steering wheel, pull the window down, pull out your license, and say, officer, what do you want me to do? So when I shared with that guy about the impact of inflection and emphasis, his whole perspective changed. He said, wow. Yeah. He put out another post right after that, said, my dear friend Willie Jolley educated me today that Black Lives Matter. They matter. And so many of my others, I made a point to talk to them because many didn't understand how we feel, the anger, the hurt. So what we're in right now is a reckoning moment. Here's the other thing, Kelly, I think is profound. That Benjamin Franklin said something that was profound 200 years ago. He said, justice and change will not be served until the unaffected are as outraged as the affected. And we're seeing that right now. Near my home, they had a Black Lives Matter protest a few weeks ago on a Friday night. And my wife and I went with our signs and stood on the street. It was from the White House all the way up to Silver Spring in Maryland. I live in DC, on both sides of the street. 2/3 of the people there were white.
Yeah.
2/3. And what we're seeing is white, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, every culture coming out and saying, we saw that video and we were outraged by it. And we realized it was wrong. So when you see wrong, as we celebrate the life of John Lewis, and he said, when you see wrong, you have a moral obligation to say something. And particularly people of faith, we must say something and say, that's wrong. Yeah. That's what our leader, the carpenter from Galilee, taught us to speak up for right, to speak up for good, and to make a statement when we see wrong. And so leadership at the top, at middle level, sometimes does not quite see it right. They don't get it. So what we've got to do is we got to lead where we are. Each one of us must make a commitment to not wait for somebody else to say that's wrong or this needs to be done. We lead where we are, right? In my book, one of my books, it only takes a minute to change your life, Kelly. Mm-hmm. There's a great little story, and I'll close with this little story, this part at least. A lady wanted to change the world, but she said it's too big. Well, I changed my family. They'll never listen to me. And she did nothing. But on her last day, she realized if I could change myself, then maybe I can change my family, who can change the community, who can change the city, who can change the state, who can change the country, who can change the world. We saw that done with a lady named Mother Teresa, who decided to make a change where she was, and it impacted the world.
Powerful message, Willie, because it really does start with the person that we see in the mirror.
Yep.
And then we have to go out and effectuate the change. And one, by not being conforming to the culture, but being transformed by the renewing of our mind. That's right. And that's really what you've been teaching so many years. I want to go back to, you just reminded me of how on that day when Dr. King was assassinated and people protesting in the streets, and your father taking you to 14th Street to see what was going on, your father being a journalist. My mother took me out of D.C. to Hagerstown, Maryland. And when we came back to the city, she took me to the downtown area and said, this is wrong. This is not what it should have been. This is not how we elevate the conversation. And this is not how we bring people to that table of brotherhood, as Dr. King talked about. I will never forget that. And because of that, This is why I like having these kinds of conversations that you and I are having. And this is what so many people miss. And Black Lives Matter is trying to bring that to the table now. And to your point, where so many whites and blacks and people of color are still protesting at Black Lives Matter here in DC. It's a chance, it's an opportunity to really elevate that conversation and also elevate the awareness and the heart so that we can take that seat collectively at that table of brotherhood.
Absolutely. It's time for the beloved community, as Dr. King said. And the way we do that is we each do a little bit, just do a little bit, do something in your sphere of influence. One of the things I just started doing, Kelly, was, you know, when my wife and I, we were on your show at one of the premiere week, we have a Jolly Marriage on Monday nights on Facebook Live, Happily Married Monday with the Jollies. And then Monday through Friday, I do a daily 1-minute video that is just exploding. And so I want to encourage people, if you will go to winwithwillie.com, winwithwillie.com, you can sign up for your 1-minute video, a powerful, uplifting video, as well as you can see some of the other resources and the song that I put out. And Kelly and I both have something in common. We're both singers as well as speakers, and that's something that while we were friends. And then finally, Saturday mornings, in a time, so much bad news, I decided to do a kind of a journalistic approach called the Jolly Good News Report on Jolly Good News Facebook page, and do it live on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So we can give people some good news in this time of such challenging news, because what you just said was so true. Many people are struggling through this time and they need some uplift. And I'm glad that they got somebody, you on national television, and I'm doing my little part on the internet. And
you're doing it, my friend. You're doing it.
So, you know, I'm grateful for that.
I got mad love for you, man. You know that. You and D, I love you guys. You are like a brother to me, even though we don't get to talk every day. I just appreciate you coming on the show. Got to have you back. And before I leave, you got to give me, it only takes a minute.
I figured you were going to ask for that. Well, I say this to all the viewers and everybody. You have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon you, you can't refuse it. You didn't seek it. You didn't choose it, but it's up to you to use it. You must suffer if you lose it. Give account if you abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but your eternities are wrapped up in it. Been a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure, a joy beyond measure for me to be with my main man, my friend, my brother, Kelly Wright. God bless you.
Love you, man. God bless you.
You.
Love
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back with more of the show after this.